Welcome back, everybody, to the Back to Brilliance podcast. We're your hosts, Henry and Joseph. Thanks for tuning in. We ask that wherever you listen to subscribe, leave a comment or review. It helps great people like you find our podcast. And with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, our topic is about strong mind, strong life, and building that inner resilience. And with that, I want to bring on our co-host, Joseph. Say what's up, Joseph, and lead us in, bro.
Yeah, hey, what's going on, everyone? Yeah, so I just want to start, as I normally say, by talking about seeking external validation versus being internally happy.
Yeah, and we're going to dig into that a little bit. We're going to unpack some of the importance of building that mental strength, sticking to the habits and learning how to be happy without needing that external praise, all a life that feels good because you built it from the inside out. So, yeah, Joseph, we like that point. You're talking about about the validations, right? Not the external validation, but finding. So yeah, give us some tips and some points on that, bro. Where we at with that?
Yeah, so first off, not what I mean by not seeking external validation. I mean always looking for someone to give you praise or someone to confirm or affirm what you believe, right? If you're not sure about if you should do something or if you shouldn't do something, versus knowing what you want, knowing who you are. It's a different mindset.
Yeah, sometimes we do get caught up in that, looking for that external validation, because for whatever reason, maybe it kind of helps us, right, to think like we're on the right path. But when you're putting in the efforts and the habits and all these things, you should already know, that's the internal validation, and when people, compliment you and give you the attaboys, that just kind of like the sign, right, to let you know you're doing the right things.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And it's not bad to be receptive to praise or receptive to what people say, but it's more so the people that they can't do anything without that. And
Mhm.
so being internally happy or being fulfilled within is a completely different mindset because you're no longer waiting for that attaboy to continue walking down the path. You're continuing to walk down the path whether or without or with or without that external validation.
Right. And that brings us to our point, bro, where we're talking about, knowing what you want and what makes you happy, right? And the happiness comes from within. It's not only from the external, so maybe you want to speak on that a little bit, bro.
Yeah, definitely. So knowing what you want and knowing what makes you happy, that right there will tell you where you should go externally. So if you're always looking for the external, you're always going to need something new, right? So if it's like, oh, I need someone to be with me to go to the movies. I need someone to tell me attaboy. I need someone to give me $5. Versus if you're happy within and you're like, hey, I'm going to go to the movies because I want to go to the movies. Or if you're like, hey, I know what my next step is because I've been journaling and I've been talking with myself. And, you could have friends or whatever, but the answer has to come from within. And nothing external will ever give you happiness. If it does, it will be very short lived.
No, good point, bro. Talking about being happy in your own space. We talked about that on the last podcast, right, where we were referencing, um, you know, being comfortable in your own skin, so to speak, and just being comfortable in who you are. And you should be happy with that, even when you are alone. So yeah, you're right, bro. Those external validations sometimes, they're not going to be there. You know what I mean? So it's like you have to build that resilience, be your own cheerleader. We talked about that the
Mhm.
last time, you know what I mean? It's encouraging ourselves and building that strong mind so we can have a strong life.
Yes, definitely. I like that. Strong mind, strong life. And again, being happy in your own space. And that's something that my life coach told me back whenever I was doing life coaching. He was saying, be happy with yourself, right? Like, be happy in your own space, or just like just content being by yourself, you have your own motor or your own gas tank or your own fuel versus people that are like, oh, I can only get work done if people are around me, or oh, I can only have fun with my friends, or whatever the caveat may be. That not only is limiting, but you're also holding yourself back from being happy because you're adding a condition to your happiness.
That's important. One of the things that I've learned, you know, as an entrepreneur, when you're out there, it really is a lonely road because there's not many people on the journey. So you have to find the tips and the tricks and the tools that will serve you, to help you to be content, and that way you don't become, what's the word, looking for that external validation all the time. Like when you work for a company, you generally get that from, your boss or your superiors, when they give you, hey, good job and stuff like that. And that kind of is the motivation. But when you're in an entrepreneur state, it's different because there's no more, you have to do this, you have to do that, so it's all on you. So creating that happy space, it does take work. It does take, effort, and you have to put that in.
Yeah, and that's pretty much that kind of leads us into our next point. But before I do that, I want to touch upon what you just said, and it's another thing that my life coach told me. It's an employee mentality versus a boss mentality, right?
Mhm.
If you're your own boss and you're the leader of yourself, then you don't need someone to tell you, "Hey, do this at this time, do that at X time," because you're not an employee. You're a boss of yourself. But that leads us into the next topic, which is not becoming complacent in your effort.
No, definitely, and that's the thing. You have to keep leveling up and keep moving, So, if not, what happens sometimes, from experience, and I could talk on that, becoming complacent, it does happen because you feel like, oh, I've arrived, I gotten to a certain point, and it's like it's not where you wanted to be. Um, but sometimes we just get comfortable, So I think with that, like you have to keep pushing through, like we're always saying, right, bro? Celebrate our wins, you know what I'm saying? So that way you can continue to progress, but don't get complacent in your efforts there.
Yeah, exactly. Know when to keep your foot on the gas, right? Because otherwise, you're gonna lose your momentum. You're gonna lose your steam, and I
Yeah.
know that firsthand. Like, that's what traditionally has kept me from succeeding at certain things because I get complacent after I'm like, oh well, I've put in 1,000 hours of work or 1,000 hours of practice. I'm like, okay, well, now I should be good. No, it's you have to keep up that momentum. You have to keep the you have to keep doing the process. You have to just stay on the journey.
No, that's a good point, bro. You got to keep your foot on the gas and keep going. Guys, don't get comfortable. Don't get complacent because there's still more work to be done. And you know, getting comfortable is not a place that's not going to build that strong mind. It's not going to build that inner resilience, to keep going when you get complacent and comfortable. So keep your foot on the gas, keep pushing, keep going, keep growing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even athletes, right? Like, you could be the best athlete in the world, but if you don't keep going, you're not going to be the best athlete in the world anymore. You're going to get surpassed by the people who have not taken their foot off the gas. So that could feel almost daunting in a way, or almost like, oh well, what's the point if someone will pass me up? But it's like, don't ever compare yourself to the external, compare yourself to the internal, which kind of goes back to what we were saying. But that also leads into the next point, which was, don't let yourself tell yourself no, let the world tell you no.
And they will, bro. That's the thing. The world will tell you no. It's like I said before, it's kind of like that, you know, crabs in the bucket mentality. So they're always going to try to pull you back. So You don't have to worry about telling yourself no because, yeah, you're right. The world will try to create that resistance for you, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And that's something again that I really struggle with. I put a lot of limits on myself because I'm like, "Oh, well, I can't do this. I won't do that. Why should I do this? Why should I do that?" And all that is telling myself no before I even do it, before the world even tells me no. Because let's say, for example, an example that I've had recently, I was hesitant on reaching out to my client to refer me another student. But my friend who's working alongside me, he's like, why are you afraid of that? You're helping her out. You're doing a favor for her. Whenever she refers a student to you, you're helping her out, not only financially, but you're doing a service for her, for whoever you're doing or whoever you're providing your services to. Because you know a service is to serve, and so yeah, I told myself no before I even let the world tell me no.
And that happens, bro. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's for whatever reason, you know, we like I said before, you know, we create the boogeyman in our lives, you know, and we always talk ourselves out of it. And
Mm.
you know, it's we don't know why we do it. Sometimes it's just habit, sometimes it's different fears and stuff like that, but you know, you got to just keep your foot on the gas, you know. It goes back to that point that we just spoke on. Keep your foot on the gas and keep going, you know, because it's going to help someone. And you know, um and when you do reach out, and a lot of times they turn around and they just thank you for doing so and for helping them, you know. So
Yeah, definitely, and it kind of pairs with the. I'm sure Henry knows this better than I do, but you know, if you never ask or if you never knock, you'll never get anything. If you never seek, you'll never get it.
true, very true, bro. You know what I mean? You got to keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. You know, you're gonna probably hear no from you know
Yeah,
those of you guys that are in sales understand this point. Like we live for that no, right? And when you get that yes, you're shocked. So it's like, you know, that takes us into our next point. You know, you got to be persistent. You know, definitely got to be persistent.
yeah, definitely. Being persistent until you get what you want, and that's something that sounds very basic, but it's something that I've struggled with before in the past. Where again, I put in X amount of time or do X amount of things, and I'm like, oh, I should just have it by now. And because of that, I'll pivot, or I used to pivot, versus people who they keep going no matter what until they get it. And then they keep going even after they got it, right? That's a winner mentality. That's a winner mindset. That's a winner habit or like successful habit. And so just going until you get it and then going after you've gotten it is a very big thing.
I agree, bro. You know, being persistent, you know, in what you want until you get it, you know, is important, you know. And the other thing is, I think a lot of times what happens is you know, it's like when you go to a restaurant, right? If you order a steak and they bring you a hamburger, you know, rather than say, no, I ordered the steak, sometimes we just settle, you know, for the hamburger. We're like, oh, wow, we don't want to wait, you know, we don't want to put in that, the time, you know, metaphorically speaking. But this is what being persistent is about. You know, don't settle for a hamburger when you ordered a steak. So, that point, you know, is just keep doing what you're doing until you get what you want.
Yeah, I will be the first to admit I will eat that hamburger and I'll put a smile on my face.
Right.
Yeah, but you're right because again, it's knowing what you want and not what other people want. Even though, you know, the hamburger could be a mistake, but again, being an advocate for yourself, speaking your own truth, even if it's not a hamburger, if it's like if someone is shortchanging you or if they're like trying to undercut you, you know, you have to know, hey, this is my value, this is my worth,
Right.
and I'm going to get what I'm worth. And it's not even in a demanding way, it's in a secure way, knowing, again, just knowing what you're worth internally. That way it matches your external, right? Like people who make a lot of money, they expect to make a lot of money because they've been making a lot of money internally. And so, you know, they're not going to settle for a $20 an hour paycheck if they've been earning more, right? So they make their internal max or match their external.
And that's the thing, that's where that resilience comes in, where you're not settling, the persistence, that's going to help you to build that strong mind and that strong life. These are some of the habits that you have to form, is persistency, not letting, not telling yourself no, just keep your foot on the gas. I think those are some key principles, that you can apply that will help you.
Definitely, which kind of leads us into our next topic, which is the pain of discipline versus the pain of regret. And so I saw this on the podcast that I was watching. It was a podcast. It's like a dating podcast, and there was a 40-year-old virgin, a famous one. That's kind of his slogan, is like the famous virgin, and he was a Mormon guy who kind of has been putting off, having intercourse because he wants to wait until marriage, and he's like a super nerdy and awkward guy, and he doesn't make it easy for himself to attract women. And so at one point in the podcast, they were talking about, hey, you should really focus on getting in shape or even losing weight, not even getting in shape, because to get into shape, first you have to lose weight, right? Typically. And so they were saying like, hey man, if you go to the gym, lose even 20 pounds, you're going to feel a lot better about yourself. You're going to feel more confident. That confidence will build competency. That competency will build more confidence, right? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, or a loop, a positive loop. And so at one point, or after they said that to him, he came up with a lot of excuses. He's like, oh, I don't know about that, blah, 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 blah. And so one of the viewers made a super chat in the YouTube comment, because it was a live stream. And the commenter said, hey, you can either live with the pain of discipline, or you can live with the pain of regret.
That's good. Yeah, no, definitely. The pain of discipline brings results, right? And the pain of regret, well, we know what that brings about, so it's self defeating. So, yeah, definitely, we have to put in the reps, in everything that we do, you have to put in the reps. So if you want to see the results, we got to put in the discipline. Is it painful? Yes, at times it is, but the rewards are greater. And I think that's what that guy was probably trying to say to him when he made that statement of pain of discipline versus the pain of regret. 40 years old and you're still, looking for that love or whatever it is. So there's a lot of things that, I didn't hear the podcast, but just based on what you said, you can kind of see that, like, the thing that was lacking is the discipline in his life.
Yeah, definitely. And also the mentality, the mentality that we keep talking about on this podcast of, he was telling himself no before he let the world tell him no. Granted, the world definitely did tell him no on some level, right? Because, what he was famous for, but also because he was telling himself that, oh, I'm a loser. He kept calling himself a loser. Almost every time that he opened his mouth about himself, it was, oh, I'm a loser. I'm a failure. Blah, 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 blah. And so
Yeah.
that really stuck with me, because you can either experience pain daily by going to the gym, right? Going to the gym is not really a fun thing. You can find fun in it, but like, it's not a fun thing to be sore for 2 days after, right? There was I forgot who said this, but if someone told you, hey, going to the gym will make you tired for the rest of the day, sore for 3 days after, and then you're going to go back to do it, only to see like, a drop in weight or whatever, right? If someone told you the X, Y, and Z of what the gym is, no one would ever sign up for the gym. But it's what the gym gives you, right? It gives you the confidence. It improves your strength. It mainly gives you confidence because of all the compound effects of going to the gym. But Yeah, no one would ever sign up to the gym if it was only pain.
Yeah, if I can outsource that, going to the gym and working out, bro, I'd outsource it because nobody likes it. But the
Yeah,
results that it brings about, it brings mental clarity, it brings health benefits along with it, physical. So there's a lot of benefits to it, but going through it, when you put in the reps and the discipline, yeah, it's not fun, but it's necessary. If not, you know, then the alternative is your body will break down, your mind will break down, all these things. So yeah, putting those disciplines in place are very important. You can either experience pain, by not doing these things, or you can experience the pleasure by putting in the efforts and, so you don't live with the regrets.
exactly. Yeah, because people will regret it, right? They're like, "Oh, why didn't I go to the gym when I was younger and fitter and healthier? Now I'm 50 years old and my body isn't the same." And you could have developed that habit when you were in your 20s or 30s, and it would have been a lot easier because it's like, "Hey, I've been doing this for 20 years, 30 years or whatever."
Right.
Versus like, "I've never been to the gym in my life and I'm 60 years old," right? So then they live with that regret.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, bro. I did that during my 20s and 30s. I just worked, so I didn't take the health serious. But when I hit my 40s, bro, that was it. I abused myself by thinking I can overcome a lot of things. I just worked through it. I'll just power through it. Stop being a sissy. Just power through. So my lunches consisted of just junk food, uh, fast food, a Snickers and a Monster, and let's go and start the day over tomorrow. But it caught up to me. That's the
Hmm.
realities. It catches up to you. So when I hit 40, oh man, it was like a whole different ball game. So I had to change. That I had to put the discipline in and start. But had I known these things like we're talking about now, and that's what our podcast is about. If we can save you guys time, by just sharing these tips and tricks and tools and things to help you along your journey to build that resilience, to give you a strong mind, strong life, then mission accomplished.
Definitely, and I just want to give you props for doing what you did whenever you realized, hey, I need to make a change, because it's one thing to notice you need to make a change, but it's a whole other thing to live that change.
Right.
Yeah, and living with regret feels a lot worse when you know what you're capable of doing, right? So you know that, like, hey, I'm capable of going to the gym, and so if you were to live another 20 years, right, from 40 to 60, and you never changed, that regret would feel so much worse than whenever you stopped regretting yourself, or not regretting yourself, but regretting that one decision of not working out and taking care of your body, right? It would feel so much worse at 60 than it did at 40.
No, and that's the thing, bro. They've done a lot of there's a lot of interviews and statistics of, where they've interviewed elderly people, in their late 70s and 80s. And they ask, what are your regrets? And a lot of the regrets are, I wish I would have did this, or I wish I would have did that. You know what I mean? It was, I chased the wrong things, so it's like, you don't want to live with that regret. It does feel a lot worse, but it's just a matter of keep doing what you want, keep your foot on the gas pedal, and don't seek that external validation from anybody else. Keep seeking the internal validation, and what brings happiness to you.
Definitely, definitely. And just making your mind stronger and continuing those good habits will always feel good, right? If you're always improving, it's only going to feel better. Hard work always feels better after it's done. It never feels good whenever you're, having to wake up at 6 a.m. and going to the job that you don't really want to go to. But it feels good whenever you've gone home and you're like, damn, I just did that. Even though I didn't want to do it, I just did that, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it's never fun, bro. Like you said, whenever you're going through it, it's never really, fun, but it's putting all the systems in place, will serve you. You know what I mean? So when you have these systems that are doing the, every day that you're doing, it's only making you better, stronger, faster, more agile, and you know strengthening the inner resilience. Again, in this journey of entrepreneurship, it is a lonely road, but it's a worthy one.
Yeah, definitely. Because who else is going to improve yourself but yourself? So, kind of like my life coach said, and I mentioned this before, but if you can master the relationship with yourself, you can master most things. And, or, uh, entrepreneurship is a reflection of everything else, right? If you're timid and you don't want to make a sale, well, you're probably timid and don't want to reach out to the opposite gender, right? Or if you're like, hey, I'm bold and resilient in my business, right? I have a daily routine, blah, 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 blah. You probably have that same resilience for other things in life. So entrepreneurship is it's all about the personal journey and improving yourself, because that personal journey and self-improvement will reflect everywhere in your life.
Very true, bro. So with that, guys, I just want to encourage you guys again. Don't seek that external validation. Continue on your journey. The internal validation, being comfortable with yourself. Don't get complacent. That's what you don't want to do. You want to keep your foot on the gas pedal, keep pushing through. Making your mind stronger, building that resilience. Continuing with the good habits. Keep doing what always feels good. Hard work. It's not. It doesn't always feel good, but the end results always bring about good things for you. So those are my final thoughts. Joseph, do you have anything before we close it out?
Yeah, definitely. Just again, be comfortable in your own skin and always push yourself for more every day. Don't compare yourself to everyone else. Compare yourself to yourself yesterday or last week or last month.
All right, guys. Well, that concludes this episode. We want to thank you for listening and tuning into our podcast. Don't forget, wherever you listen in, hit that subscribe button so you can be notified when new episodes drop. Leave a comment or a review. It helps great people like you find our podcast. And until then, have a blessed day.
Bye bye.